Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Spark of Genius Flesh and Blood production. We have our part two of our outsider card impressions, our top five kind of card impressions from Sunday and onward. So, the previous video, part one, was for everything up to and including Saturday. And then we have Sunday onwards. Pretty big day for reveals on Sunday. A lot of Ranger cards being focused on here. A lot of traps, equipment, and
Hmm.
such. As always, I'm joined by Ron, my co-creator, co-commentator, co-caster, co-compatriot, not necessarily in that order. And in this particular case, we're going to be kind of going through. It's going to be a lot of Ranger stuff, a little bit of Ninja stuff. We got some cool Ninja stuff coming out too. So I'm going to start it off here, as you can see, with the Riptide trap. So Riptide's a pretty interesting hero. We'll go a lot more in depth about these new heroes in our following kind of videos about CC and Limited, but he likes the traps, right? He's the trap master, and he does do the one damage off triggering the trap, so it doesn't actually have to trigger. You can't just play it. That would be kind of busted. That'd be
Hmm.
way too busted. Now that I'm thinking about it, you just run a shit ton of traps. But anyways, he gets three legendary traps. Legendary as in legendary keyword, not legendary rarity.
Yeah.
They are majestic traps. So they're probably going to be short printed now that I'm thinking about it. So interesting thing to know. If they did their thing right and didn't accidentally short print
No
another
more
card instead.
mistakes. Yeah.
No, six. Surgical. So this is two traps I want to talk about here: the buzzsaw trap and the collapsing trap. I forgot what the third trap's name is. I feel like it's good, but I feel like these two are just
Hmm.
better. But you're gonna run all three. So all of these at absolute base, they're blue zero cost. So the majestic traps are blue zero cost, the rare traps are yellow zero cost, and the common traps are red zero cost. That's like the theme that we're kind of going for here, which makes sense as like their kind of base defense is like kind of three effective, four effective plus, and here's just a blue. And so if they all do the trigger, they come in for one health damage or Riptide. So essentially they're 0 for 4 blues minimum, right? Which is fantastic. It's 0 for 4 blue. Like it's, I Red Faith for scenes 0 for 4, but it's red. But so when busts out trap, when it defends an attack, not just an attack action, very important to note here, with power greater than its base, the attack can't gain power. So it's a very powerful card, as many of the decks use strong kind of power buffs nowadays, right?
Hmm.
So really Stonewall's Dory's Dawnblade, preventing it from
Hmm.
keeping the counter it has, because Dory has to hit to be able to keep the counter, as Dawnblade says. Prevents Dory from swinging again, because if you don't hit with the Dawnblade, you can't swing again with it with Dory. I guess you could technically 20 Blade, but that's kind of besides the point.
Right.
It can completely kind of stonewall a turn just by blocking the base amount that Dory kind of swings in with, and Buzzsaw Trap blocks for three. Dory
Perfect.
based on Blade
Perfect
swings for
cover.
three.
Yeah.
The match made in heaven here. So it's also very solid into Guardian. Not as good, obviously. I think Dory is like the best case scenario.
Hmm.
Solid into Guardian to prevent pummels on non CNCs, because obviously this is a defense reaction, so you can't use this into CNC. However, if people pummeling Endless Winter is pretty common, pummeling Choke Slam, things like that. And
Yep.
especially if they take damage to launch it back. So a lot of the time they're like, oh, I'll take 5 damage, I can just pummel you back, right? So it is very good in those situations. Same thing. Bravo and Oldham can both do that. So it's very good into Azalea also, who tends to put a
Yeah.
lot of buffs on one arrow. And with outsiders coming out, there's a hell of a lot of buffs to choose from here, and attack reactions to that matter. Um, it could be decent into Lexi and nullify like multiple buffs on one of the arrows. However, Lexi does go kind of wide, and Buzzsaw Trap only affects like the one attack. You can't just like, it's not just like every attack on a turn. That would be broken beyond any measure of a doubt. So
Hmm.
it's good. It's also good against like the Viscerai Shrill, like Shrill of Skull form that gains the power from the aura creation. Essentially, good potential in the new Katsu decks that want to get a buff to like get an on hit combo
Hmm.
going. So if they're trying to buff to get over whatever defense you're packing, you could just stonewall it. The situations are just kind of like, they're vast. It really does deserve
And there's a
legendary,
reason
especially.
why it's only one of. Yeah. Yeah.
It,
Absolutely
there's
right.
there's a They're very good reason it's a one of very very strong card. The second trap I
Yeah.
want to talk about out of his legendary ones are collapsing trap. So it's a very good anti-aggro card, right? Where go again is way more likely to be a common piece of the deck. So we're thinking decks like Fi, decks like Katsu, Runeblade decks, Dromai. Dromai's there's some problem with Riptide versus Dromai. There's a problem with Ranger into Illusionists in general, but
Hmm.
we're not talking
Right.
about the go again aspect here, right? Even into decks like Rhinar, off like Blood Rush turns, you gain go again because again it's defense and attack with go again. If you're swinging claw 5 go again after this, I could just collapse trap your entire hand and
Yep.
see what you can do off of that. You could stonewall a Blood Rush turn if they get like zero pitch to do anything else or zero discards, right? Um, Being able to firstly disrupt like a sculpted hand where they might have like taken a hit or like taken damage, like an on hit, like some kind of token or damage because of how good it was, and then making them draw a new one is already really good, right?
Yep.
In a lot of situations, especially versus aggro decks, but in decks in general. But then they have one less cards to draw, like they're drawing three instead of four. It could potentially stop the turn right there, or at the very least make it more suboptimal because you lose a card and depending on how much you needed your 4 card hands or your 5 card hands with Arsenal, it could really, really screw up the math, right? So these two traps, extremely good. I
Hmm.
think the other trap, spike trap, spike pit. I think it's spike pit trap, something along those lines.
Hmm.
Good card, but it really only does damage. It can do a lot of damage, but it doesn't really stop the turn. It's
Yeah.
just it does
It's
damage.
not
Whereas
disruptive.
yeah, Buzzsaw and collapsing can just stop a turn. It's just so good, and it still does a little bit of damage with Riptide.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
Yeah,
those are the traps.
awesome. Moving on to one of the Azalea cards that was spoiled, the Crow's Nest. So, Crow's Nest is one of the new quivers that came out, a new slot in Outsiders that allows you to use it alongside a bow. So it's a brand new equipment slot that you can get just for free if you're a ranger. And this one is pretty darn powerful. So it reads whenever an arrow is put face up into your arsenal from your deck, meaning you've used Azalea's ability, pretty much top deck an arrow, put it into arsenal, you may pay one resource, and if you do, you can put an aim counter on it. So this allows Azalea to use arrows that benefit from aim counters without needing to use the Sandscour Great Bow or the other new bow that came out, the barbed Castaway, I believe is the name.
Yeah, Barb
And
Cup.
it lets you keep the Death Dealer. And Death Dealer is probably the best bow in the game. Probably on par with Voltaire, I guess, but it allows you to draw a card when you load an arrow, which is insanely good. And if you pair that with this new quiver, you can get some real cool benefits. So some of the cards that are already used in Azalea decks, one of them is the Deadeye. Now this is a buff that gives +3 and adds the on hit to look at your opponent's hand and discard any card you want. That's an on hit that you have to block. Like there's no going around this, right? So it can
No,
completely destroy a turn if you have a dominated arrow that also discards a card of your choice from their hand. So because it's already used in the decks, there's like it's almost like 100% upside to use the quiver in this case. Another example is the drill shot. This arrow, if it has an aim counter, it gains piercing 1, which is pretty good. The on hit is actually very relevant. So if you can prevent the opponent's armor from dealing from blocking this attack, you can get some real good benefit from that. There are some new arrows too that have come out from Uprising, from Outsiders on Uprising. One of them we'll talk about later, the Barbed Undertow. I will leave that for a later discussion, but some more to just talk about the Infecting Shot. This is a 1 for 5 arrow, and if it has an aim counter, it gains +1, and the on hit is to create a Blood Rot Pox token. So effectively, it'll be a 1 for 5, pay 1 for the aim counter, so it's gonna be like a 2 for 6 that gives a Blood Rot. So like a 2 for 8, I guess, if you add up all the damage. So pretty good on a dominated arrow. And there are
mhm.
other ones that also give other types of tokens, like the Withering Shot gives the Frailty, and the Sedation Shot gives the, I believe it's
Inertia.
the Inertia token. So those
Yeah,
are all really good additions to the Azalea deck, I think. And the Crow's Nest really allows you to utilize those arrows to their full potential. So it'll probably push Azalea to be a more, not as much yellow, but more blue build because the extra resource is kind of hard to pay if you're pitching a lot of yellows because you got to use a yellow for your Death Dealer. You got to also pay 1 for potential buff, or the cost of the arrow is typically 1. So you're gonna want to be pitching a blue to utilize Crow's Nest usually.
mhm.
But no harm in putting a few more blues in your deck. I think this card's gonna be a must-have in Azalea.
No, I totally agree. I'm definitely curious to see the kind of ratio payoff to like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, how many things that like needed aim counters can now be put into the deck? What kind of buffs you're going to use? But kind of
Yeah.
if you have more space, depending on the meta, how ice heavy and how disruption heavy is,
I also
you can
forgot to
use those
mention
kinds of
Hemorrhage Bow
cards.
as well. Hemorrhage Bore, another really
Image
good
board,
attack,
yeah,
which
yeah,
is a pseudo CNC if you have the aim counter on it. So I think the red
yeah.
might have a place in Azalea. It's just too
Mhm.
strong. So like a 2 for 5 CNC pretty much. All
Nope,
right.
totally true.
Moving on to Katsu
Moving on
stuff.
here. Yeah, so a little bit, little ninja cards on here. I don't think we talked too much about ninja so far. A lot of them came out on Sunday, I think. So we're talking about the surging line, the new surging line that came out. So it's the Descended Gust Wave, Bonds of Ancestry, and Dishonor. So Bonds of Ancestry was actually released pretty early, but I don't think we got Descended Gust Wave until pretty recently, right? So
Hmm.
we could talk about kind of Descended Gust Wave first.
It's like
So
the second
uh,
chain in the
it's the
combo.
second one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we got the reprint. Um,
Surging
sorry, we
Strike,
got
I
the reprint
believe.
of Surging. Yes, we got Surging, but we're not going to get Whelming. This Descendant is going to be the only Gust Wave for limited, unless you're playing CC, then you get both, right? But Descendant Gust Wave is a little bit different. It's a one cost, but you could make it essentially free plus two go again. So it's going to be a 0 for 5 go again off the combo versus Whelming. Whelming was a 0 for 3, so it'd be a 0 for 4 go again, but it's an on hit. So you get plus one damage essentially, but it's a little bit. I don't know if I would say it's better than Whelming because you don't get the
Hmm.
on hit, you just get the plus 1 damage. But the key is in CC you get both, right? Which is kind of nice, but
Yeah.
it's definitely a bit of a downgrade as far as the gust waves go. But the key is the next pieces. So
Yeah.
in addition to Magenshi and Lord of Wind, you can now choose Bonds of Ancestry into Dishonor, right? So Bonds of Ancestry is a very interesting card. So it's got a lot of text on it. It's a 2 cost. It's a 0 cost off the combo. So it's a 0 for 4 go again. It banishes when it attacks. So it doesn't have to hit, unlike Mugenshi, that does have to hit, right? So Bonds of
Right.
Ancestry, when it attacks, you may banish a card with combo from graveyard. If you do, search your deck with same name, banish, shuffle, and play it. So very like it's Katsu. It's Katsu on a stick, right? So instead of you hit with something, Katsu, discard, and then search, it's something already in the graveyard, banish it, get something of the same name, right? So it's funny that you can like Katsu something and then
And
you can
use
Bonds
this.
of Ancestry
Yeah.
and then banish it and then go find another copy of that card, technically
Hmm.
speaking. So like you can banish a Dishonor and then go you can discard a Dishonor because it's a
Right.
0 cost to Katsu. Find the Bonds of Ancestry, use the Bonds of Ancestry, banish your Dishonor, go find your other Dishonor, and then hit him for a lot if you have a reaction, right? So there's cool, nifty things to be able to get your combos going. Again, you are using like a fair amount of cards. If you banish them, you won't be able to necessarily get them back with like any. I don't think there's a card from ban. You can get them back from banish at the moment, and Lord of
Um,
Wind can't get.
no, I don't think
Um,
so.
yeah, Lord of Wind can't get it either. It only gets Mugenshi's, Whelmings, and Surgings back. But it is a very nifty combo. Pretty on rate. Blocks for 3. It is a rare, so blocks for 3, which is kind of nice.
Hmm.
And very very strong overall. And then Dishonor, the last one. So it's a
Yeah.
blue block 3, akin to comes in for 2, akin to Lord of Wind as far as the base stats goes.
Right.
But the key here on the ender is that if you control your full combo line, which you generally do, especially when you play Lord of Wind. Also, you generally do. Not always, because you could like Mugenshi and snaps it to Lord of Wind, and it's a way to prevent fatigue because you still get those cards back in your deck. In this particular case for Dishonor, the hero loses all abilities for the rest of the game. This could win you matchup. This wins you matchups, right? Like, hey Kano, I
I
just
was
hit you with
I was just
Dishonor.
thinking of Kano.
Like
The
it's
hero's useless
literally
at that point.
you might have to kill me in response,
Yeah.
otherwise you just
Yeah.
but the wizards are definitely a big one for this. Um,
Yep. Islander
taking taking
especially.
dom taking the dominate off Bravo is pretty funny because then he just like if you could he has trouble closing out games. I think there's a lot of abilities where it's quite good. Taking Phi ability away is a nice way of like, no, you don't get those Phoenix Flames back.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, cool. That's a lot of damage over the course of the game.
At least
The only
Dash
thing is
doesn't have to
like
worry about it.
I was about to say it's like Dash doesn't care, but like the Dash matchup was not fun for Dash. Like
Yeah.
Katsu was doing some nasty things to Dash to
It's
begin
true.
with. So it's a very very good combo ender where now you'll have the option to have I don't want to get kind of fatigued. You run some of the Lord of Wind lines with Genshi, but then you also have the option to be a bit more aggressive with Dishonor and
Hmm.
take like that permanent advantage. So
Yeah, and it's
very
still
very
a
nice combo
blue,
line.
zero costed blue that deals
Blue
four
block 3.
blocks for three. It's
Yep.
it's pretty excellent from
Yep.
the
And if
bare stat line perspective.
Yeah, it is. And then if you block with it for 3,
Yeah,
you can still find another one with Bonds of Ancestry by
yeah. I'm
banishing it, right?
betting that
So
blocking with the first one's going to be kind of a tactic where you can get the second one for free with your Bonds of
yeah,
Ancestry.
blocking or using it for Katsu, right?
That
So
too. Yeah.
either way to like get one in the graveyard. You only need to hit with it once,
Hmm.
right? So
Yep.
I would definitely run this line and see where that goes. So
Yeah.
off to the next one now.
Okay. Next, we have the arrow that I was alluding to earlier, which I think is probably one of the strongest arrows that we've seen so far.
If not, if
Besides,
not, if not the
if not the
strongest, probably.
strongest, I still think that Red in the Ledger is probably a little more disruptive. But this one basically says if it has an aim counter and it hits a hero, you can pick a color, and that opponent cannot pitch a card of that color. So I assume you're gonna pick blue most of the time, unless you're against like Fi or something. Even Fi probably pick blue,
You
but
still pick blue.
yeah, I
Still pick
think you
blue.
would always pick blue because I think every deck runs blue anyway, and a blue is really what enables your turns to pop off. So basically, if you pick blue, the opponent cannot pitch blue cards in their turn, meaning that if they don't use the blue cards, it's going to stick in their hand till their next turn. There's no other way to really get rid of it unless they have specific gimmicks that discard cards. So really, really strong. This card will most likely be dominated because you do have to dominate an arrow with Azalea's ability to put the aim counter on it. So you're often going to pair this with dominate with the ability, which is really, really good. The opponent's probably going to want to block with their blue card if they see this card come in because they're going to guess that you're going to pick blue anyway. But in terms of disruption, this can completely shut down a turn. Like if you can't pitch your blue for your turn, what are you going to do? Pitch a red to play a blue or pitch your yellow to play a blue? Like it's really, really disruptive. So yeah, really, really strong arrow. I think there's not much more to say about it unless you have any more opinions, but I just think it's one of the best arrows in the game if you can get an aim counter on it.
Yeah, I totally agree. You definitely need the aim counter, and with Azalea's Crow's Nest, it's a blue will allow you to load with Death Dealer, put an aim counter on it, and fire it, right? Because
Exactly.
a
One
blue
blue will
covers
cover all
your entire
three.
thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. So having a two card hand where it's a blue barbed undertow is still like pretty reasonable
Yep.
if you absolutely have to block with two cards because you are forcing blocks. Like this card is you're forcing blocks with this card, right? So I think a two card hand that can force blocks is akin to CNC, which is
Yeah.
fine. It's fine, but
Basically.
and you still get Arsenal because you're pitching for Death Dealer, right? So
She'll
you're gonna
draw a
you're gonna
card.
draw off Death
Hopefully it's
Dealer.
a
Yeah,
good
you're
card,
gonna
yeah.
yeah. If you get a
Or you can
zero for
draw a
three buff
zero
or
cost
something,
buff, like seek and destroy.
a
Pop
zero
that
cost
down.
buff,
Yeah.
or if you have Tunic up, it could be one of the one for force, or
Exactly.
a
Yeah.
or
Or the
a
Deadeye, which
yeah, or
also will
Deadeye,
add
which
the
is
discardability of this card. So, yeah,
eight.
insane potential for this. It can be like a one for, well, I guess a 2 for 8 arrow dominated that can discard a card from your opponent and prevent them from pitching a specific color. So yeah, this commands block. There's no way that you're gonna let this through. Basically.
Commands and blocks. Yes, that's the new line we're taking here.
All
So the
right.
last one's another pair of cards. I didn't read the assignment properly. I'm clearly just going on
Just
too many
Riptide.
cards with my picks here. Well, no, I
Oh,
just
just
like
too
every
many
time we're like
cards. Yeah.
the five cards, and we're like, yeah, I'm talking about like 2 to 3 cards per pick
This is a
here.
top 7 right now.
It's a top 7 at 7, and we have a trap combo here. So we have Tarpa Trap and Boulder Trap. So these are a couple of the rare traps that are more for CC, mainly because Boulder Trap, which is the next one, has kind of no targets and limited. It's looking at -1 counters on
Is the
equipment.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, -1 on equipment they control, which is just like, well, limited generally doesn't have a lot of. Or, I mean, Walk Up to Wraith and stuff like that. There are sets that
Yeah.
limited does. This is not one of them. This looks like one of those prevention pseudo. Some stuff has very very few pieces, right? So not as useful. Tar Pit could have an impact against Ninja Unlimited, so not a ton of native Go Again that a lot of heroes can use, but a lot of the Ninja cards do have Go Again, so it could be a thing. Starting with Tar Trap, so it's the yellow trap. So I mentioned earlier, the zeros block for 3 and can trigger off Riptide, so it's like a yellow for 4 essentially if you can trigger it, which is
Hmm.
above rate as it is, because it is base block 3 at yellow.
Hmm.
Putting this card against decks like Ninja and Runeblade specifically has a great impact, right? There's a lot of applications to other decks, but as far as like the rules understanding, is like I did check the judge chat to make sure I wasn't like bonkers when I thought about how this works. But if Tar Pit triggers on the first go again against a Katsu, the Mask of Momentum, nor the Katsu will be able to activate for the turn,
Hmm.
which is a little bit bonkers because essentially it says Katsu is the first attack, right? The first attack hit, Mask of Momentum again
It's the
is on
third.
that attack hit.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's not the next
I
kind
see.
of pit. It's the
So if you
third
miss
one.
your
But
window
the
to
third
use it on that next card, you cannot
exactly,
use it. Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly, which is kind of bonkers when you think about it to just
Hmm.
shut off Katsu Mask and Momentum.
Yeah.
It doesn't stop Links. Links is just when an attack action hits. So Lynx does get around it. You can if something else hits later in the turn, you can always trigger Lynx off of it, right?
Mm.
Um, Against Briar, this could ignore something like a Fuse Force of Nature, draw off the first attack action, off a Snatch that would draw
Yep.
2 and now draws 0, which is pretty hilarious.
Yeah.
It won't stop like the power buff from like a channel mount or anything like
Mm-hmm.
that. It's not like Buzzsaw, it's not broken. But it could be used against like a Raw Snatch. It blocks for 3, you leak 1. It's like, well, are you leaking 1? It's like, sure, but they don't get their card, right? So you may leak 1, but you
That's
get the
true.
oh well, this doesn't have go again, so it would need to have go again on it,
That's
right?
right. Yeah,
So
that's true. Yeah, yeah. So
yeah,
if
so
a
it would have
card
to have
if a
go
card
again.
with go again has a really relevant on hit, then
Yeah,
it will apply for that same card that you block because it says the next card that
yeah,
hits, right? So it will
yeah. I'm
apply.
more thinking
Yeah.
about when they have usually the decks that play snatch also have
Maybe
snaps,
they've already
right?
snapped it. So if they snap a
Yeah,
snatch
so they
against you,
snatch. Yeah,
hey,
you let snaps resolve, and you just like
yeah,
tarp it trap.
that
Well, I'll take
hurts.
1 damage.
That
Trigger,
hurts.
you take 1 damage if
Yep.
you're Riptide. If not, if you're Azalea, you're still pretty good,
Yeah.
right? Because they don't get the draw and they wasted snaps.
Exactly. And Azalea
Uh,
typically will play Bolt and Shot first, right? So you can play this
hmm.
against Bolt and Shot, and then the next arrow will have no ability, basically.
Yeah, exactly. This turn the effects don't trigger, so like you won't get. I think you don't get reload, right? Because reload is on hit
That's true.
also.
If Bolt and Shot does hit that turn, then it will not get your
Yeah,
reload. That's true. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
But I was
Uh,
thinking if this completely covers the Bolt and Shot, then the next attack that you have will not have an ability, pretty much. So if you're planning to Bolt and
yeah,
Shot into Red in the Ledger, they block Bolt and Shot completely with this card plus something else. Maybe Red in the Ledger has no ability, basically. It's a vanilla
yeah.
one for fun.
And it's this turn, so they can't like break the chain and do some like
Right, right.
ridiculous shenanigans. It's
That'd be pretty
another one
awful, I
is
think, if it was on the chain, because then anyone could break
it'd
the
be really
chain.
bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The other one was Moth Skies, right? Moth Sky Shrill.
Mm-hmm.
So Moth Shrill getting that go again blocks it. You don't have to worry about those rune chants of the generation here. So if you really want to keep your hand and you don't want to take like another 3 damage off like a red moth, you don't have to, which is quite kind of nice. So those are
Yeah.
some examples. Boulder Trap is the next one.
Mm-hmm.
So Boulder Trap is mainly good against decks with more armor up front. So using it early against like a 2 block armor piece. So we're thinking Brave Forge
Yeah.
Bracers. We're thinking
Tech plating
Crown
is
of
another one.
Providence, Tech Plating, Perch Grapplers. Or like there's a
Right.
bunch of armor pieces that do block for 2 and then 1, or just 2 Blade Break, and you'll get effectively 2 life out of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you use it early enough and get against a 2 block, it essentially makes it a 0 for 5, right?
Yep.
Effective, right? Because you're getting
And then you
3
get
up
the
front.
1 damage from Riptide, so maybe like a 0 for 6.
If you're Riptide, you can 0 for 6, and the minus counter is just like super good
Mm-hmm.
because minus counter is on 2. Make the because everyone you first start, you're just like, oh, it's just 1. Well, it's like no, not if their armor blocks for more than 1 to begin with,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And even if you get like a 1 block armor, or you get like one that already has a counter on it and you still get 1, it's still 0 for 4 or 5 off Riptide, I guess, when you're thinking about it that way.
Right.
But the card then becomes extremely good against decks like Oldhim, right? When they run Rampart and
Mm.
you're on Azalea and you're just like, well, Rampart is just disgusting. It's like, well, yeah, but now if they pummel anything, or they use Titan's Fist that comes in for 4 instead of 3, right? Because if
Mm.
it's a 3 cost, Titan's Fist becomes a 4. Well, guess what? The attack. Notice these all say attack, not attack actions.
Mm-hmm.
The attack power greater than base, 4 is bigger than 3. Put a -1 on your Rampart. Seems
And that's a
seems pretty
permanent
good for that
-1, right?
matchup.
Yeah.
It's a permanent -1. So now instead of just relying on drill shot hitting and putting a -1 on Rampart, you now have another way that you
Mm-hmm.
can put a -1 on Rampart, which makes the matchup a little bit more
Right.
palpable.
So
You know,
this
a little bit
card
more
is
interesting.
suitable for both Riptide and Azalea, I guess, if she wants to
Mhm.
use this. Yeah.
I think you need to have these in the sideboard until Oldhim goes away.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
If you want to play as Azalea, I think like you're good into aggro decks, like that you never really had that much of a problem into
Right.
aggro decks.
Right.
If you drew what you needed to draw, but like your issue was against like Oldhim
Control.
Guardians, like
Yeah.
yeah, decks that can either fatigue you out or they can just like get such immense value off of you. And so this is trying to claw a bit of that value back. So that's the last of the cards. Did you kind of have any other thoughts about these traps, Rob?
No, I think because they're yellow, it makes it much more suitable for Azalea, just in general.
You pitch
But
it, right? Yep.
you can still pitch it exactly. Otherwise, no, I agree completely. Nothing more to say.
Yep. And for all our viewers here, if you like this kind of content, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. Do you agree with our they're not really hot takes. We kind of explained everything we were talking. I don't think any of these are big secrets here, but
Yep.
for either our cards that we did today or the cards maybe on Tuesday that were released, if there are any other cards that you think might be impactful in limited CC or both, or if you agree or disagree with our thoughts for any of those videos, let us know. We always like to hear differing opinions as how we grow as a community, as a game, as a person,
As a
right?
person.
And so, as a person, and so from wherever you're watching in the world, have a good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Bye for now.